When it comes to the original Dragon Ball run of the manga from 1984 to 1995, as written and drawn by series creator Akira Toriyama, Vegito stands as the absolute strongest character of them all. Even with his holding back state of Super Saiyan, he is able to effortlessly beat the ever-loving crap out of Gohan-absorbed Super Buu, who's the strongest antagonist of the original run, with absolutely no difficulties. And then, once you consider the fact that he was holding back as a Super Saiyan and still potentially has Super Saiyan 2 and 3 in the tank, that gives you a pretty big idea of just how much power this guy had that we just never even got to see. And even counting the various protagonists and antagonists introduced in the anime-only sequel Dragon Ball GT, Vegito's power is still pretty considerable, and he still stands in the top 10 if you count the anime and manga as part of the entire original run. But because of these anime and manga differences in Vegito's presentation and the fact that more people have experienced the anime without ever even checking out the manga, this has led to big misconceptions concerning Vegito's abilities. How strong is he in relation to Goku and Vegeta individually, and also how much stronger or weaker is he than Gogeta, which is kind of the impetus for this whole video. Gogeta is basically confirmed to be part of Dragon Ball Super Broly, and whenever you bring up Gogeta, Vegito discussions and debaters and fans immediately join the conversation to debate, as they always have, which of these two fusions is stronger. So this is going to be kind of the first part of a two-part series where I will run down each of these fusions individually, and then in the second video, which will be also the Gogeta one, I will give a definitive answer as to which fusion I think is more powerful, using official statements from guidebooks, authors, and whatever I can find to try and narrow things down. Now, the one guidebook I will not be using for either this instance or for Gogeta is the El Manga Legendario. Now, I know that's an official Toei-approved guidebook. I know it's floating around somewhere on the internet, and I've seen some statements surrounding Vegito's abilities and power, but considering the fact that I have never actually gotten my hands on this thing and I've never really gotten it to read for myself, I am not going to use second or third hand information from people I don't entirely trust as the basis for this video. So if you're someone who's going to be kind of annoyed by me not using absolutely all of the official information, please note that the El Manga Legendario is in Spanish. I don't have the translated copy, and so because I just haven't read the thing, I'm not going to be using it as part of my analysis here. Instead, I will be focusing on stuff that I have read and stuff that I do know is pretty dependable when it comes to authenticity. So before we get down to the nitty-gritty of it, we have to establish one thing, and that is the aforementioned difference in presentation between Vegito's abilities in the manga and in the anime. In the manga, base Vegito is only around for a few pages before he immediately transforms into a Super Saiyan, and this is the only form that he fights Buuhan in. However, the anime takes a completely different approach, where base Vegito is able to not only fight Buuhan, but does so for several episodes very, very successfully, and it's even kind of implied that he only turns into a Super Saiyan to dick around with Buuhan, or at least that's what the fans would lead you to believe. Even in the anime, where base Vegito is much, much more powerful, Buuhan is not taking him seriously during this battle, and it's implied that if Buuhan did take him seriously and did fight all out, base Vegito would have lost. But in spite of this little misconception, in spite of these differences, it's still pretty obvious that anime Vegito is much, much more powerful than his manga counterpart. And because many more people have watched the anime than they will ever read the manga, and they just kind of take whatever the anime says and shows for granted, this has led to big problems with people exaggerating Vegito's abilities or downright ignoring official statements from guidebooks and such because they want to fit their own narrative. I'm going to try and do as little of that as I possibly can to figure out a reasonable range of abilities for this character to kind of cut through all the bullshit and the fan theorizing and get to what is the closest bit of truth that I can, while also commenting on some statements that I did not take into account for my calculations and my explanations for why I didn't do that. So first off is the low bar for Vegito's abilities, which is pretty easy because we get a pretty clear-cut statement as to what that is supposed to be. It comes from Daizenshu 7 and Daizenshu 2, which state that base Vegito is stronger in power than a Super Saiyan 3, meaning that at absolute bare minimum, base Vegito has to be stronger over 400 times than either Goku or Vegeta individually. Some people try to muddy the waters when it comes to this particular statement by thinking that, Daizenshu means Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Goku, or it means Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks. However, the Daizenshu and other guidebooks directly compare characters' powers in relation to one another when it serves their purposes. An example of this is when they compare Gotenks to Majin Vegeta to show us how much stronger he is in relation to this character. And I think that if the Daizenshu wanted us to draw a comparison between a specific user of Super Saiyan 3 and Vegito's power increase in base form, they would have just named a character. So I don't think it means a specific user of the form, I just think it means that base Vegito is a bigger power increase than Super Saiyan 3 is all on its own. So that's the low bar handled with, but it's the upper echelon of strength that gets kind of really difficult to determine, because it comes from GT, and that's already a problem in and out of itself, but not for the reasons you might think, and it's also not anywhere near as clear-cut as the Daizenshu statement, because it's comprised of two sentences. In the first sentence, it says that after merging with the merging item, Goku and Vegeta become Vegito, and then by transforming, they become Super Vegito, a master of the universe. Basically a fancy way of saying he becomes the most powerful character in the show, which is of course true. But the second part of the sentence is where problems arise, where it says that after merging into Vegito, Goku and Vegeta, as this new fused being, they attain a power that is stronger potentially than a Super Saiyan 4. Base Vegito could be a bigger power increase than Super Saiyan 4 itself. There's a picture of base Vegito next to this statement, which further implies that base Vegito could be a higher multiplier than not just Super Saiyan 3, but also Super Saiyan 4. However, as already established, this sentence and this whole statement are kind of contradictory, because one part of it seems to emphasize the power of Super Vegito over anything else, but then the second part emphasizes base Vegito, which is going to lead us to two scenarios. Scenario 1 is base Vegito is stronger than a Super Saiyan 4, and scenario 2, which I will also cover, is going to work under the assumption that Super Vegito is stronger than a Super Saiyan 4. And this is going to lead to two very different ranges of power that I feel make sense for both the manga and the anime respectively. But before we can do that, I'm going to have to address a few things. The first fact of the matter is that GT is a sequel to the Z anime, and as I already established, the Z anime uses different scaling than the manga, with many characters being far more powerful in the anime than they are in the manga, which of course brings into question whether or not it's even right to use a GT fact when addressing the manga. But because we don't really have any other reputable sources to determine the upper echelons of Vegito's strength for the manga specifically, I'm going to ignore this potential continuity problem and the differences between these continuities and just apply the statement to both of them for the sake of convenience. The next part is going to be Super Saiyan 4. This transformation has no official multiplier. Despite the fact that it's been around for over 20 years, we have never gotten any kind of official word that tells us definitively that Super Saiyan 4 increases your power by this many times. And this is going to be the one part of the video where I'm going to interject my own fan theories and headcanons, because we have absolutely nothing really to go off of, no guidebooks or anything, besides comparisons between Goku's transformations and the forms of Baby and comparing the power increases between all of that stuff and the super exciting guide multipliers provided to reach a number which I feel makes sense for Super Saiyan 4. That is, Super Saiyan 4 is a 40,000 times power increase. Now, I intend to do a video down the line which is going to explain why I think it's 40,000 times, but just for the time being, please just accept that as something reliable for the sake of this video so that we can just get down to the subject at hand. So, scenario 1 will be working under the assumption that base Vegito is a bigger power increase than Super Saiyan 4, meaning that at the absolute minimum criteria required, base Vegito would be 50,000 times stronger than Goku and Vegeta individually, which, when you combine that with the 50-fold increase of the first Super Saiyan form, leads to a further increase of 2.5 million. This fits the anime continuity very well in my eyes, where the character is, of course, far more powerful, his abilities are far more exaggerated, and it just fits the crazier nature of the anime very well. So, in scenario 1, Vegito in his base form is 50,000 times stronger than his fusion components individually, while Super Vegito can go as high as being over 2.5 million times stronger than Goku and Vegeta individually. Scenario 2 is going to deal with the assumption that Super Vegito is stronger than a Super Saiyan 4, and just like I already did, I'm going to lowball him into being a 50,000 times increase from Goku and Vegeta individually when he transforms into a Super Saiyan, which, when you subtract 50 from that, leads to base Vegito being about 1,000 times stronger than Goku and Vegeta individually. This perfectly fits both the criteria of base Vegito being much stronger than a Super Saiyan 3, and also Super Vegito being stronger than a Super Saiyan 4, and considering the seemingly more conservative abilities of the character in the manga than his anime counterpart, makes a lot of sense for the original run of the Dragon Ball manga continuity. There are a couple more things I'm going to run down, a couple things I didn't take into consideration when doing these calculations, and the first one is Vados' statement from Dragon Ball Super where she says that Potara fusion makes you dozens upon dozens of times stronger, and this is an absolute load of bullshit that makes no sense whatsoever. How is it possible for base Kefla to overwhelm a Super Saiyan God Goku, one who is admittedly tired and not at full power, but still a Super Saiyan God Goku in a transformation that is many times stronger than Super Saiyan 3, which is already hundreds of times stronger than Goku's base form? This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever unless you apply some Z Vegito type power boosts to Kefla, which would be in the thousands or tens of thousands of range, which once again contradicts Vados' statement. So yeah, if you're wondering why I didn't take Vados seriously, it's because her statement is absolutely fucking stupid and it has absolutely no logical weight whatsoever, and I can't take it seriously. The next one comes from actually the super exciting guide, which says that Vegito is Goku times Vegeta. Now, regardless if you think that base Saiyans are stronger or weaker than Frieza, the androids, or Piccolo in the Buu arc, if you multiply even people with like 100 million power level with another person of 100 million power level, you're gonna end with a battle power that is so ridiculously high, I don't even know what the name of it would be, which would get even more ridiculous if you added another 50 times power boost to whatever insane number base Vegeta would get if you literally multiplied Goku and Vegeta together. Now, there is one way you can make Goku x Vegeta equals Vegito make sense, and that's if you say that Buhan absorbing people multiplies his power instead of just adding to it, which is what I and most people tend to assume. But this also leads to the bloating problem where Buhan is going to get retardedly massive numbers in his battle power if you apply the multiplication logic to it, and this is going to lead to even more problems with Vegito, because then you're going to have to bloat Vegito by some kind of insane criteria to make him stronger than Buhan. Goku x Vegeta can technically work, it would just end with such insanely big numbers that would be impossible to really calculate them, and even if you did calculate them, it would still be a pretty gargantuan mess. Yeah, for the sake of my sanity, I can't really take Goku x Vegeta equals Vegito seriously. It's too bloated, it's too big, and too ridiculous to make any kind of sense, at least in my opinion. So that is my statement on the power ranges of Vegito in the anime and the manga. Of course, lowballing the character in both instances and trying to fulfill the criteria of one or two of his versions being stronger than a Super Saiyan 4, which of course I derived from my own formula. What do you think about these numbers? Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you disagree with the fact that I ignored Vados' statement from Super or the super exciting guide thing? If you do, please comment down below, and hopefully I'll see you for the follow-up where I will cover the much simpler to deal with Gogeta and compare these two fusions together to determine which one of them is definitively stronger than the other.